Fill up the tanks with Alaskan crude, load up the captain and the crew. All aboard, there's work to do. Heading out of Prince William Sound, caught off guard, no one around. Off course, hey, what's going down?
There has been a past of many oil spills, not only just the Exxon Valdez spill. In 1978, March 16th, the Amoco Cadiz encountered stormy weather and ran aground off of the coast of Brittany, France, spilling its cargo, which was 68.7 million gallons, into the sea, polluting about 200 miles of Brittany's coastline. Also, the Arabian Gulf spills. The beginning was in late January of the 1991 Gulf War. The Iraqi army destroyed tankers, oil terminals, and oil wells, causing to release about 900 million barrels of oil, which was the largest oil spill in history. The Exxon Valdez was the largest spill in U.S. history. Even though it didn't spill all of its oil, it spilled a lot, enough to cover the shores of Prince William Sound, Alaska, even after 25 years later. In total, it had 53 million gallons of oil on board, and only spilled about 10.8 million gallons of it, which impacted about 1,100 miles of shoreline. Following the Exxon Valdez being the largest in U.S. history, the second largest in U.S. history is the Megaborg, spilling about 5.1 million gallons of oil as a result of a lightering incident that was resulted in a subsequent fire, occurring 60 miles away from Galveston, Texas, on June 8, 1990, a little over a year after the Exxon Valdez disaster. When the pipeline first opened, the Coast Guard closely monitored ships and told them to stay in the shipping lane, even though they were filled with ice. During departure, safety was a main priority. If the ice blocked the navigation channel, the boats had to slow down without turning out of it if it got too rough. But for the Exxon Valdez, they were in a hurry to get it to its destination, so they made a change, saying if there was ice, you can move around the navigation channels to try to get out.
By our radar, I will probably divert from the TSS and end up in the inbound lane if there's no conflicting traffic. Over.
That night, Hazelwood had been drinking, so he left his third mate, Gregory Cousins, in charge to handle the boat. Federal investigations later showed that Cousins lost track of the ship's location without turning back in time. Due to the reduced tanker crew, they found out that he must have been overworked and tired, which contributed to the accident. The investigation faulted Hazelwood, the captain, for leaving the bridge, and that his judgment was impaired by alcohol. Later, Hazelwood denied that he was drunk, and then got criminal mischarge related to drinking.
We've fetched up hard ground and evidently only get some oil.
It was promised to have a swift cleanup, but everyone was so overwhelmed they didn't know what to do.
9 hours after the wreck, and there was not a speck of promised recovery equipment on the water. This had all been promised within 6 hours, and we were 3 hours past 6 hours, and
Then
nothing.
soon after, everyone was out cleaning the oil. 70-mile-an-hour winds shut down the operation for the day, and less than 15% of the oil was recovered.
And marine biologists from around the country to save the animals.
The longer that a marine animal is sitting in oil, the more you're going to be dealing with death.
Terry Williams had just published a study on cleaning oil from California sea otters.
Everything we had learned was going to be tested.
It was a race against time. But the first otter did not arrive until day 7.
The otter was overheated, he was dehydrated, but he was in pretty good shape. I really thought that the job was going to be fairly easy. Clean him up, and he was going to do just fine.
Instead, the sea otter died.
You had cleaned him, we'd done everything we could.
There were population changes and 2 species of seabirds that were affected. Long-term studies have shown that sea otters and ducks still lack recovery over 2 decades later. The otters were still exposed to lingering oil after the cleanup was all over. An estimated 250,000 seabirds, 2,800 sea otters, and 300 harbor seals were killed in the immediate aftermath, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric. The spill costed over $2 billion to clean up. And still today, there is oil on shores and in the Pacific Ocean. 1,300 miles of shoreline was covered in crude oil. More than 11,000 Alaskan residents cleaned up the spill. There were also boats with volunteers cleaning up the animals who were affected by the spill. In order to make all of this happen, they purchased food and clothing. Just under a year after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, a federal grand jury indicted Exxon and its shipping subsidiary on 5 criminal violations. 2 felony charges accused Exxon of allowing incompetent crew to leave the port, with the others being misdemeanors, charging Exxon with killing waterfowl under the Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and discharging oil under the Clean Water Act and Refuse Act. Exxon pleaded not guilty. U.S. Attorney General Dick Thornburgh said the company faced $600 million in fines. When the Justice Department unveiled a plea bargain on the eve of the 2nd anniversary of the spill, Exxon agreed to only pay $100 million in fines and restitution. Leaving the only person charged with this disaster was Captain Joe Hazelwood. The state accused him of criminal mischief, operating the Exxon Valdez while intoxicated, and reckless endanger, all felonies, and a misdemeanor charge of negligence, discharging oil. After 2 months on trial, the jury convicted only the misdemeanor. He then served his sentence, 1,000 hours of community service and $50,000 in restitution, picking up trash on acreage highways. According to Richard Muir,